I woke to the ache in my joints, the dull throb of my latest enhancement settling into my flesh. The ruins of what was once called Chicago surrounded me, a graveyard of shattered concrete and metal. I flexed my new cybernetic hand, watching the hydraulics move beneath the synthetic skin. It was a masterpiece of pre-war tech, scavenged from a military bunker. And it was the reason I could never go home. Rook, the freak, they'd called me. More machine than man. The elders of my tribe had made their judgment clear. There was no place among them for someone who'd embraced the old world's poison. So I left. Or rather, I was thrown out, cast into the wasteland to fend for myself. That was 3 years ago. Now I'm a scavenger, eking out an existence in the radioactive ruins. Each new piece of tech I graft onto my body is both a triumph and a curse. It keeps me alive, makes me stronger, faster, but it also pushes me further from what's left of humanity. I was rooting through the remains of an old electronics store when I found it. A data chip, miraculously intact, its casing untouched by rust or radiation. My eyes scanned it automatically, decoding the encrypted data within seconds. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. Coordinates, descriptions, rumors of a place untouched by the war, a utopia, hidden away from the devastation that had consumed the world. I'd heard whispers of such places before, of course. Every wastelander had, but this was different. The data was too specific, too detailed to be mere legend. For a moment I allowed myself to imagine it. Clean water, uncontaminated food, people living without the constant fear of raiders or radiation or starvation. It was a fool's dream. And yet, I made my decision quickly. There was nothing left for me here in this dead city. I gathered what supplies I could carry, ammunition, purification tablets, ration packs, and slung my rifle over my shoulder. As I prepared to leave, a group of hostile scavengers emerged from a collapsed building. Their eyes lit up as they took in my cybernetic enhancements. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a walking treasure trove of valuable tech. Well, their leader sneered, brandishing a rusted machete. Looks like we found ourselves a chrome job, boys. I didn't want to fight. Despite what my tribe believed, I wasn't a mindless killing machine. But I knew reasoning with these men was pointless. They'd made their choice the moment they stepped out of the shadows. My reflexes kicked in as the first attacker charged. I sidestepped his clumsy swing, my hand closing around his throat. With a crunch, I crushed his windpipe. The others froze, suddenly unsure. I used that moment of uncertainty to strike. My legs, augmented with powerful hydraulics, propelled me forward. I was among them before they could react, my fists and feet delivering lethal blows. In seconds it was over. As I stood there, surrounded by broken bodies, I felt a familiar sense of revulsion. Not at the violence itself, that was a necessity in this world, but at how easy it had been. How natural it felt to use these parts of myself. I shook off the feeling. There was no time for self-reflection or moral quandaries. The coordinates on the data chip beckoned, promising something I'd thought lost forever. Hope. As I set out into the wasteland, leaving behind the familiar ruins of the city, I couldn't help but wonder. Was I walking towards salvation? Or just another mirage in this endless desert of despair? Either way, I was committed now. Whatever waited for me out there in the irradiated wilds, it had to be better than the hollow existence I was leaving behind. The sun beat down mercilessly as I trudged through the scorched earth. My eyes constantly scanned the horizon, alert for any sign of danger. But my mind was elsewhere. If this utopia was real, what would it mean for someone like me? A man more machine than flesh, a relic of the very world that had brought about this apocalypse. Would I find acceptance there, or just another place to cast me out? Days of grueling travel across the irradiated wasteland had taken their toll. My enhancements pushed my body beyond human limits, but even they had their breaking point. As I crested a hill, My vision picked out an anomaly in the desolate landscape. A squat, concrete structure partially buried in the sand. Approaching cautiously, I recognized the telltale signs of a pre-war military bunker. These facilities often held valuable tech, but they were just as likely to be death traps. Still, the promise of supplies and shelter from the sun was too tempting to pass up. The bunker's airlock yielded with a reluctant groan. Stale air rushed out, carrying the musty scent of long-abandoned spaces. My eyes adjusted instantly to the darkness, revealing a scene of hasty evacuation, overturned furniture, scattered papers, and the eerie absence of human remains. A faint whirring caught my attention. I followed the sound to a sealed door. The door slid open, revealing a figure that made me freeze. It stood over 7 feet tall, its metallic frame polished even in the low light. An android considerably more advanced than any I'd encountered in the wasteland. "Identify yourself," it demanded, its voice a disconcerting blend of human inflection and synthetic undertones. I tensed, ready for a fight. "Name's Rook. I'm just a scavenger looking for supplies." The android's eyes, unnervingly human-like, scanned me. "Designation, Rex. Combat model, XR-713. You possess significant cybernetic enhancements. Threat assessment, high." We stood in a tense standoff, each evaluating the other. I noticed the military insignias on Rex's frame, realizing I was face to face with a relic of the war that had ended the old world. "I'm not here to fight," I said slowly. "What are you still doing here? The war's been over for decades." Rex's posture shifted slightly. "Mission parameters, unclear. This unit has been in standby mode since the evacuation. Purpose, unknown." I saw an opportunity. This android Rex was powerful, potentially dangerous, but also lost, much like myself. "I'm on a mission of my own," I ventured, "looking for a place they say wasn't touched by the war, a kind of utopia. Your military databases might have information about it." Rex was silent for a moment, processing. "This unit has no current mission. Your quest for this utopia aligns with this unit's core programming to safeguard human life. Proposal, alliance." Having a combat android as an ally could mean the difference between life and death out in the wastes, but trusting a machine, especially one designed for war, was a risk. "All right," I decided. "We'll work together for now, but I don't fully trust you, and I'm guessing you don't fully trust me either." "Affirmative," Rex replied. "Trust is earned. This unit will comply with the Alliance parameters." As we gathered supplies from the bunker, I reflected on the irony of the situation. Here I was, cast out by humans for being too machine-like, now partnering with a machine that was struggling to understand its place in a human world. "Tell me about this war," I prompted as we worked. "Your databanks must have information about how it all started." Rex's eyes flashed, processing. The conflict arose from resource scarcity and ideological differences. Escalation was rapid. This unit's creation was a response to overwhelming enemy technological superiority. "And look where it got us," I muttered, gesturing to the desolate world around us. "Query," Rex said, his tone shifting slightly. "Do you believe this utopia truly exists?" I paused, considering the question. "I don't know," I admitted. "But out there, it's a daily fight for survival against raiders, mutants, and radiation. The idea that there might be something better, it's worth pursuing even if it turns out to be a dead end." Rex nodded, a surprisingly human gesture. "Logical. Pursuit of improved conditions aligns with core directives." As we prepared to leave the bunker, I realized that this unlikely partnership was going to change everything. Rex was a relic of the old world, just like my cybernetic parts. Together, we were walking contradictions, products of the very war that had destroyed civilization, now searching for its last untouched remnant. We stepped out into the harsh sunlight, the vast wasteland before us. "Let's move out," I said, adjusting my pack. "We've got a long road ahead of us." Rex fell into step beside me, his heavy frame leaving deep imprints in the sand. Affirmative. Mission parameters accepted. Commencing Operation Utopia search. And with that, we set off into the unknown, an unlikely duo bound by circumstance and a desperate hope for something better in this unforgiving world. The harsh sun beat down on us as Rex and I trudged through the wasteland. Days merged indistinctly, distinguished only by brief respites in the shadows of ruined buildings or the shelter of shallow caves. Rex's frame shined in the sunlight, seemingly impervious to the heat that made my remaining organic parts sweat profusely. "Environmental hazard detected," Rex announced, his optical sensors focused on the horizon. "Radiation levels increasing. Recommend altering course." I squinted, my vision zooming in on the shimmering air ahead. "Looks like an old reactor site. Must have gone critical after the war." I adjusted our heading, giving the area a wide berth. As we walked, I found myself growing curious about my robotic companion. "Rex, what do you remember about the world before? Your creators, your purpose?" Rex's servos whirred as he processed the question. "This unit's memory banks contain extensive data on pre-war military operations and technological specifications. Personal recollections, limited. Creator identities, classified. Primary purpose, combat and infiltration." I nodded, unsurprised. Sounds like we were both tools of war in our own ways. "Clarify," Rex requested. I flexed my arm. "These enhancements, they're based on military tech, designed to create super soldiers. I pieced that much together over the years." "Affirmative. Your cybernetic components share design similarities with certain combat prototypes." We lapsed into silence, each contemplating our origins and the war that had shaped us. The quiet was shattered by a distant, inhuman screech. "Multiple hostiles detected," Rex announced, dropping into a combat stance. "Unidentified life forms approaching rapidly." I unslung my rifle, scanning the area. "Muties, nasty ones by the sound of it." From behind a dune, 3 figures appeared. Radiation had warped their bodies beyond recognition. Grotesque muscle mass bulged beneath scar-riddled skin, and their eyes held only mindless aggression. "Threat assessment?" I asked, taking aim. "Hostile entities possess enhanced strength and aggression. Recommendation: eliminate with extreme prejudice." The mutants charged, covering ground with frightening speed. I squeezed off 2 shots, downing one, while Rex engaged another in hand-to-hand combat. His fists cracked bone and pulped flesh. The third mutant blindsided me, its hand raking across my back. I grunted in pain, feeling warm blood mix with the sweat on my skin. Twisting, I brought my arm up in a vicious backhand that sent the creature flying. Before it could recover, I emptied my magazine into its twitching form. The fight over, I slumped to one knee, breathing heavily. Rex approached, his frame spattered with dark blood. "You are injured," he stated. "Medical attention required." I waved him off. "It's not deep. The automed in my system will take care of it." As if on cue, I felt the familiar sting of nanobots deploying to the wound, knitting flesh and stemming blood flow. Another gift of pre-war tech, as much a curse as a blessing. These enhancements, I mused, watching the wound close, they keep me alive, make me stronger, but every time I use them I feel less human. Rex tilted his head, an oddly organic gesture. Query: what defines humanity? This unit observes that despite extensive modifications, your behavior patterns remain distinctly human. I laughed. That's the question, isn't it? What makes us human? I was cast out by my own people for being unnatural, but out here in the wastes, nobody cares as long as you can survive. Survival is a primary directive, Rex agreed. But your actions indicate motivations beyond mere survival. The search for this utopia suggests a desire for community, for meaning. Are these not human traits? His words gave me pause. I'd never thought of it that way before. Maybe you're right. Maybe being human is more about what's in here. I tapped my temple, than what's on the outside. As we resumed our journey, I found myself re-evaluating my perspective. Rex, for all his mechanical nature, was proving to be more than just a combat unit. His observations and questions were forcing me to confront my own prejudices and fears. The wasteland stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, the promise of utopia beckoned. But I was beginning to realize that the journey itself and the unlikely companionship I'd found might be just as valuable as the destination. "Rex," I said as we crested a hill, "what do you hope to find if this utopia turns out to be real?" He was silent for a moment, his processors humming. "This unit seeks purpose, a place where my capabilities can be utilized for construction rather than destruction. And you, Rook?" I smiled, surprised by the depth of his answer. "I guess I'm looking for the same thing, a chance to build something instead of just surviving." Two outcasts, man and machine, united in our search for meaning in a world that had lost its way. As we crested a hill, the landscape before us shifted dramatically. In the distance, a massive structure dominated the horizon, a relic of the old world that had somehow survived the apocalypse. "Scanning," Rex announced, his optical sensors whirring. "Structure identified as pre-war satellite array, detecting unusual energy signatures." I zoomed in, taking in the details. The array was surrounded by a settlement, cobbled together from scrap metal and salvaged tech. But something felt off. "No movement," I muttered. "A settlement that size should have people visible, even at this distance." As we neared the perimeter, the reason for the stillness became clear. The inhabitants moved in an odd, uniform way, staring blankly and acting like machines. A figure approached us, its gait mechanical. When it spoke, its voice was a discordant chorus of multiple tones. "Welcome, travelers. We are Swarm. You have entered our domain." I tensed. "What are you?" The figure's eyes flashed, and when it spoke again, it was with a different voice. "We are many, united as one. A collective consciousness, born from the ashes of the old world." Rex's processors hummed as he analyzed the situation. "Detecting widespread cybernetic implants and neural interfaces. Hypothesis, a crude hive mind network." The realization hit me. These people had linked their minds together, creating a collective consciousness. It was simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. "You're not like the others who come here," Swarm said. "You are enhanced, different. You could join us, become part of something greater." "Thanks, but we're just passing through, looking for supplies, information about a place called Utopia." Swarm's expression shifted, a ripple of interest passing through the assembled crowd. "Utopia? We have heard whispers. Perhaps we could share information for a price." "What kind of price?" I asked, wary. "Your enhancements intrigue us," Swarm replied. "Allow us to study them. In return, we will share what we know." I exchanged a look with Rex. "All right," I agreed reluctantly, "but no invasive procedures, and Rex stays with me." Swarm led us to the base of the satellite array, where a lab had been set up. They began their examination. "Your cybernetics are remarkable," Swarm commented, its many voices blending into harmony. "More advanced than what we've salvaged. With such enhancements, one could greatly expand the reach of the collective." I tried to ignore those words, focusing instead on our goal. "What can you tell us about Utopia?" Swarm paused, as if consulting its collective memory. "There are stories of a place untouched by war, hidden beyond the wastelands. But the path is treacherous, guarded by those who would keep paradise for themselves." As Swarm spoke, I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my head. For a moment, I felt like someone else was in my head. "Rook!" Rex's voice cut through the noise. "Your neural patterns are showing signs of interference. Recommend immediate disengagement." I staggered back, breaking contact with Swarm's examination equipment. The collective's many faces watched us. "You have experienced a taste of our unity," Swarm said, advancing slowly. "Why resist? Join us and never be alone again." "We're leaving," I growled, my hand going to my weapon. Swarm's expression hardened. You cannot leave. Your enhancements will strengthen the collective. You will join us, willingly or not. As one, the members of Swarm moved to surround us. Rex shifted into a combat stance, his systems humming with readiness. Rook, he said, his voice low. I am detecting vulnerabilities in their network. A targeted electromagnetic pulse could disrupt their coordination. Can you generate one? Affirmative, but it will temporarily disable my non-essential systems as well. Rex's frame charged with energy, and a wave of invisible force rippled outward. The members of Swarm collapsed like puppets with cut strings. I scooped up Rex's temporarily immobilized form, grunting under the weight of his metal chassis. Time to go, partner. I didn't stop running until the satellite array was a distant silhouette on the horizon. As Rex's systems came back online, I set him down. That was too close, I panted. Thanks for the save back there. Rex's optical sensors refocused on me. You are welcome, Rook. I felt it prudent to protect my ally. I smiled, noting the slight hesitation in his voice. It seemed our journey was changing both of us. What do you make of what Swarm told us about Utopia? Rex was silent for a moment, processing. The information aligns with our previous data. However, the warning about Guardians suggests additional challenges ahead. Whatever's out there, we'll face it. I'd rather take my chances with the unknown than lose myself to something like Swarm. The sun was dipping as Rex and I approached what appeared to be a junkyard. Towers of scrap metal and decaying machinery stood before us, a monument to the old world's excess. Detecting multiple heat signatures, Rex announced. Caution advised. Looks like we've found the Scrapyard King's domain. Stay alert. Suddenly, strangers emerged. They were a crew of scavengers, their bodies adorned with crude cybernetic enhancements, metal limbs, glowing eyes, and exposed circuitry. Well, well, a voice called out. What have we here? A man stepped forward, his body a blend of salvaged tech and metal. One eye was a vibrant red orb, while the other remained disturbingly human. I am the Scrapyard King, he announced, his voice a blend of organic rasp and synthetic modulation. And you, my friends, are trespassing in my kingdom. I raised my hand slowly, showing we meant no harm. We're just passing through, looking for information. The king's mismatched eyes narrowed. Information, eh? That's valuable currency in these parts. But I'm more interested in what you two are packing. His eyes rested on my cybernetic enhancements and Rex's advanced frame. Perhaps we can strike a deal, the king continued, a grin spreading across his face. I offer you safe passage and information in exchange for upgrades. Rex's processors whirred. Clarify the nature of this proposed exchange. It's simple. I'll grant you safe passage and information, but in return, I get to study your enhancements. Maybe even take a few choice pieces for myself. After all, your tech looks far superior to what I've cobbled together. I took in the Scrapyard King's subjects. Their enhancements were crude, painful-looking things. A far cry from the precision tech I'd scavenged over the years. Rex stepped forward. Proposal. Allow us to examine your workshop. We may be able to offer technical expertise in exchange for information and safe passage. The king considered this for a moment. Intriguing. Very well, you may see the fruits of my labor. Follow me. As we were led deeper into the scrapyard, I whispered to Rex, What are you thinking? We can't trust this maniac. Negative, Rex replied quietly, but gathering intelligence on his operation may prove valuable. Additionally, stalling provides time to formulate an escape strategy. I had to admit it was a solid plan. The Scrapyard King's workshop was a nightmare of sparking wires and half-finished cybernetic monstrosities. The walls were lined with containers holding organs and limbs, both organic and mechanical. Magnificent, isn't it? The king beamed, gesturing to his creations. Here we transcend the limitations of flesh and machine. As he spoke, I noticed movement. My enchanted vision picked out faces twisted in pain, bodies strapped to tables. These weren't willing subjects. They were captives. "You're torturing these people," I growled. The king's face darkened. "I'm improving them. Evolution is never painless, boy." Rex's combat systems hummed to life. "Negative. We will not be participating in your unethical experiments." "Pity," the king sighed. "I had hoped you'd see reason. Guys, prepare them for processing." Chaos erupted in the workshop. I dove for cover while Rex engaged the nearest guards, his powerful frame sending them flying. "Rex, we need to free the captives." "Agreed," he responded, his fist connecting with the scavenger's jaw. "I will create a diversion. You release the prisoners." As Rex drew the bulk of the scrapyard king's forces, I made my way to the holding cells. I made short work of the locks, and soon a stream of terrified captives was fleeing into the maze of the scrapyard. Rex and I fought back to back, our abilities pushed to their limits against the king's cybernetic horde. As we neared the outskirts of the scrapyard, I saw our opening. "Rex, the fuel tanks!" "Understood," he replied, his processors whirring. "Detecting exposed electrical wiring near the containers. Calculating optimal point of interference." With precision only a machine could manage, Rex grabbed a length of scrap metal and hurled it at the exposed wiring. The metal connected, causing a shower of sparks that ignited the leaking fuel vapors around the tanks. The resulting explosion rocked the scrapyard, sending towers of junk crashing down. In the chaos, we made our escape, the screams of the scrapyard king fading behind us. As we put distance between ourselves and the smouldering ruins of the king's domain, I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions. "You okay, Rook?" Rex asked, his tone carrying a hint of concern that surprised me. I flexed my hand, watching the servos work beneath the synthetic skin. "Just thinking. The scrapyard king. He was a monster, but in a way, aren't people like me walking the same path, replacing our humanity bit by bit?" Rex was silent for a moment, his processors humming. "Negative. Your enhancements do not define you. It is your choices, your ethical considerations that separate you from entities like the Scrapyard King." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "You're right. It's not about what I am, but who I choose to be." As we continued our journey, the hunt for Utopia felt different now. It wasn't just about finding a safe haven anymore. It was about proving that even in this broken world, even with our cybernetic parts, we could still hold on to our humanity. Rex and I had been traveling for days since our narrow escape from the Scrapyard King's domain. The encounter had left its mark on both of us, not just in the form of dents and scratches, but in the way we viewed our own existence. As we crested a hill, a new sight caught my vision. In the distance, nestled in a valley, was a settlement. Instead of the usual ramshackle structures cobbled together from scrap metal and ruins, this place seemed organic. Crude wooden palisades surrounded clusters of what appeared to be mud brick houses. "Rex, you seeing this?" I asked, zooming in on the settlement. His optical sensors whirred as he focused. "Affirmative. Detecting minimal technological signatures. Hypothesis. A community that has rejected advanced technology." I frowned, considering the implications. Could be trouble for us. They might not take kindly to a couple of walking tech repositories. As we approached, people emerged from behind the palisades. They were dressed in rough-spun clothing, armed with spears and bows. Their faces were etched with suspicion and fear as they took in our cybernetic components. "Halt!" A man stepped forward, his grey beard and adorned staff marking him as a leader. "You bring the taint of the old world to our sanctuary. State your purpose or be gone." I raised my hands slowly, trying to appear non-threatening. "We're travelers, seeking information about a place called Utopia. We mean no harm." The old man's eyes narrowed. "Utopia? There is no paradise in this broken world except what we make with our own hands, free from the corruption of machines." Rex spoke up. Query: your society appears to have rejected all forms of advanced technology. What is the reasoning behind this decision? A murmur ran through the gathered tribespeople. Some gripped their weapons tighter, while others looked at Rex with fear and fascination. The elder raised his staff, silencing the crowd. Your companion speaks? How curious. He stroked his beard, considering us. Perhaps there is value in hearing your tale, but know this, any sign of aggression, any attempt to corrupt our people with your technological taint, and you will be cast out, or worse. We were led into the settlement, the eyes of every inhabitant following our every move. Children peeked out from behind their parents, some pointing at Rex with wonder, others hiding in fear. The elder brought us to a large communal hut at the center of the village. Inside, a council of men and women sat in a circle, their faces illuminated by firelight. "Strangers," the elder announced, "you stand before the Council of Purity. Explain yourselves and we shall judge whether you may stay. My name is Rook. This is Rex. We come from the wastelands, searching for a better place. A rumored utopia, untouched by the Great War." One of the council members, a woman with tattoos covering her arms, leaned forward. "And what of your modifications? Do you not see that it was such abominations that brought ruin to the world?" I flexed my cybernetic hand, watching the firelight play off its surface. These enhancements, they've kept me alive in a world that wants me dead. But I've seen the darkness they can bring too. The Scrapyard King, the Swarm, they showed me how technology can corrupt. Rex's processors hummed as he added, "Observation. Technology itself is neutral. It is the application and intent that determines its moral value." The council murmured among themselves, some nodding thoughtfully, others shaking their heads in disagreement. The elder raised his hand for silence. "You speak well for abominations. We will allow you to stay the night. Perhaps there is wisdom to be gained from your experiences. But know that you are watched. Any attempt to introduce your technology to our people will be met with severe consequences." We were led to a small hut on the outskirts of the village. This place, with its rejection of all technology, seemed like the antithesis of everything Rex and I represented. And yet, there was something almost enviable about their simple existence. That night, as Rex entered his low-power mode to conserve energy, I found myself unable to sleep. The sounds of the village, so organic, so human, were a stark contrast to the mechanical hum I'd grown accustomed to. I stepped outside, gazing up at the stars. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine a life here. No more scavenging for parts, no more fighting off raiders and mutants, just living. But as I looked down at my cybernetic arm, I knew it was an impossible dream. This place, for all its purity, was as much a prison as it was a sanctuary. A rustling sound caught my attention. In the shadows between huts, I saw furtive movement. Curious, I activated my enhanced vision, zooming in on the source. A group of villagers, led by the tattooed councilwoman, were gathered around something or someone. As they shifted, I caught a glimpse of a body on the ground, its chest cut open. They were performing some kind of ritual, removing the person's organs and replacing them with plants, roots. I couldn't quite make it out. I stumbled back into the hut. This place, this supposed sanctuary of purity, had its own dark secrets. As I looked at Rex's dormant form, I realized we needed to leave, and soon. But not before we uncovered the truth behind this twisted paradise. The night stretched on, filled with uneasy dreams of roots burrowing into flesh and flowers blooming from open wounds. Whatever answers we sought about Utopia, it was clear they wouldn't be found here. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, I nudged Rex out of his low-power mode. "We need to move," I whispered, my eyes darting nervously towards the door of our hut. Rex's optical sensors came to life, scanning my face. "You appear distressed, Rook. What has transpired?" I quickly recounted what I'd witnessed during the night, The secret ritual, the body, the horrific melding of flesh and plant. Rex processed this information in silence, his internal components humming softly. "This data conflicts with the tribe's stated ideology," he finally said. "Further investigation is warranted." "Agreed, but we need to be careful. If they catch us snooping around..." A commotion outside interrupted our plotting. Peering through a crack in the hut's wall, I saw the villagers gathering in the central square. The elder stood atop a wooden platform, his staff raised high. "Brothers and sisters!" His voice boomed across the settlement. "Last night, Mother Earth blessed us with another ascension. Rejoice, for one more of our own has shed the weakness of flesh to become one with nature." A cheer went up from the crowd. These people weren't just rejecting technology. They were embracing something sinister. We slipped out of the hut, using the crowd's fervor as cover. I scanned for threats as we made our way to the outskirts of the village where I'd witnessed the grisly ceremony. The site was deserted, but evidence of the night's activities remained. Dark stains marred the earth, and the air was thick with the cloying scent of unknown flora. Rex knelt, analyzing the scene with his advanced sensors. "Detecting traces of human DNA mixed with unidentified plant matter," he reported. "Chemical analysis suggests a symbiotic relationship is being forcibly established between human and plant cells." I felt my stomach turn. They're not just killing people. They're transforming them. A twig snapped behind us. We whirled to find the tattooed councilwoman standing there. Her eyes blazed with fervent passion. "You've seen," she hissed. "You weren't supposed to see." I raised my hand slowly, acutely aware of the growing crowd at her back. "What you're doing here, it's not natural, it's not purity." "Natural? What do you know of nature, machine man? We are becoming one with the earth, shedding the corruption of the old world. This is the true path to paradise." Rex stepped forward, his frame shining in the morning sun. Query: how does forcibly altering human biology align with your stated goal of rejecting unnatural modifications? The woman's face contorted with rage. "Silence, abomination! You have no place in the world to come!" With a gesture, she sent the villagers charging towards us. Armed with primitive weapons, they were no match for our capabilities. But there were so many of them, driven by a fervor that bordered on madness. "Rex, we need an exit strategy." Rex calculated options. "The palisade wall, the surrounding forest will provide cover for our escape." Fighting our way through the mob, we made for the village's wooden barrier. Rex's powerful frame smashed through the logs like they were toothpicks, and we burst into the dense foliage beyond. We ran for what felt like hours, the sounds of pursuit fading behind us. Finally, when my lungs felt like they would burst, we allowed ourselves to slow. Leaning against a tree, I tried to process what we'd just experienced. Those people, they thought they were creating paradise, but it was just another kind of hell. Rex was silent for a moment, his systems cooling down from the exertion. Observation. Humans often pursue ideological extremes in times of great upheaval. The rejection of technology has led this group to embrace a different, but equally dangerous, form of modification. And they'll keep doing it, keep ascending people, unless someone stops them. "Do you propose we return and intervene?" Rex asked, his tone neutral but his combat systems still at the ready. I considered it for a long moment. The idea of leaving those people to their fate didn't sit well with me. But we were just two beings against an entire village of fanatics. "No," I finally said. "We're not equipped to handle this, but we can warn others, make sure no one else stumbles into that death trap thinking it's salvation." Rex nodded, accepting the decision. "A prudent choice. Our primary objective remains locating the rumored utopia." We set off again, leaving the forest and the twisted village behind. How many other pockets of humanity had turned to such extremes in the wake of the apocalypse? And what would we find if we ever did reach our fabled utopia? The wasteland held new terrors, Not just the physical dangers of radiation and marauders, but the knowledge that the very idea of purity could be corrupted into something monstrous. "Hey Rex," I said as we walked, needing to break the heavy silence. "Yes, Rook? Promise me something. If I ever start talking about becoming one with nature or rejecting all technology, just knock me out and drag me to the nearest scrapyard, okay?" Rex's vocal synthesizer produced a sound that might have been a chuckle. "Understood. I will add prevention of botanical symbiosis to my list of primary directives regarding your well-being." I laughed, grateful for the moment of levity. Whatever horrors the wasteland had in store for us next, at least I knew I had a partner I could trust. Cybernetic enhancements, quirky humor and all. Days had passed since our narrow escape from the plant-worshipping village, and the wasteland seemed determined to throw every challenge it could at us. "Water reserves at 12%, Rex announced. "Recommend locating a water source within the next 48 hours. Any settlements on your long-range scanners?" Rex surveyed the horizon. "Negative. However, I am detecting an anomalous energy signature approximately 20 kilometers to the northeast." "Anomalous how?" I asked, already adjusting our course. "The energy output is consistent with pre-war fusion technology. It appears to be a contained, stable reaction. Functioning pre-war tech of that caliber could mean only one thing: civilization." As we approached the source of the energy signature, a structure began to materialize through the heat haze. It was a bright dome of what looked like polished metal, untouched by the ravages of time and radiation. "Remarkable," Rex said, his sensors working overtime to analyze the structure. "The dome appears to be composed of a self-repairing nanomaterial, highly advanced, even by pre-war standards." As we drew closer, I noticed movement around the base of the dome. Figures that moved with an uncanny precision, their forms a seamless blend of organic and mechanical parts. "Halt!" a synthesized voice boomed across the salt flat. "You have entered the domain of the cybernetic collective. State your purpose or be terminated." I raised my hands slowly, acutely aware of the weapons trained on us from hidden emplacements around the dome. "We're travelers, seeking information about a place called Utopia." There was a pause, and I could almost feel the unseen eyes scanning us, assessing our cybernetic components. "You bear the marks of technological enhancement," the voice finally responded. "You may approach for evaluation." We were escorted inside the dome. The interior was a stark contrast to the harsh wasteland outside. Pristine white surfaces, holographic displays, and the soft hum of advanced machinery. We were brought before what appeared to be a central terminal. A figure emerged from behind it, a seamless integration of flesh and advanced cybernetics. "I am Nexus," it said, its voice a perfect blend of organic and synthetic tones. "Welcome to the future of humanity." "Query, what is the purpose of this facility?" Rex asked. Nexus's lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Purpose? Why, to perfect the human form, of course, to shed the weaknesses of flesh and ascend to a higher state of being." I felt a knot forming in my stomach. "And the people here, they all chose this willingly?" Nexus waved a hand dismissively. "Choice is an illusion born from the limitations of an organic mind. Once they see the perfection we offer, all embrace it." As Nexus spoke, I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. Humans, or what used to be humans, were being led into chambers lining the walls. The doors closed, and screams echoed through the facility, quickly cut off and replaced by the whir of machinery. "You're forcibly converting people." Nexus's eyes narrowed. "We are saving them. The world outside is dying. Here, we offer eternity." Rex stepped forward, his combat systems coming to life. "Observation. Your methods violate basic human rights and ethical standards." "Ethics? An outdated concept. We deal in absolutes. Perfection. Immortality." I saw the decision in Rex's posture before he made it. In a fluid motion, he grabbed a nearby console, and ripped it from the wall, hurling it at Nexus. Chaos erupted. Rex and I fought our way through the facility, searching for a way to shut it down. Rex, can you access their network? There must be a way to free these people. Rex processed the request. Affirmative. Attempting to breach their cybernetic network now. As I fended off the approaching guards, Rex stood motionless, his advanced systems working to infiltrate the collective's defenses. Suddenly, Rex's eyes flashed. Access granted. I've discovered a dormant subroutine in their cybernetic enhancements. It appears to be a failsafe, designed to restore individual autonomy. Activating subroutine now, Rex announced. Like a wave rippling through the facility, the collective's members began to falter. The blank expressions on their faces gave way to confusion, then shock, and finally, horrified realization. Nexus stumbled forward, its movements no longer fluid and precise. What have you done?" it gasped, the synthesized perfection of its voice cracking. I approached cautiously, keeping my weapon trained on Nexus. "We've given these people back their free will, their choice." All around us, the former members of the collective were coming to terms with their autonomy. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the rush of individual thought. Others looked at their cybernetic parts with wonder and revulsion. "You don't understand," Nexus pleaded, its voice now fully human and filled with anguish. "We were trying to save humanity, to make it perfect." "Perfection without choice isn't humanity," I replied. "It's just another form of extinction." The freed individuals began to turn on the facility, tearing down equipment and destroying the conversion chambers. The utopia of the cybernetic collective was crumbling, not from an external explosion, but from the internal rebellion of its own awakened members. Rex and I made our way to the exit, helping those we could and watching as the dome that had once symbolized technological perfection began to collapse under the weight of human emotion and free will. Once outside, we watched as people streamed out of the failing structure, blinking in the harsh sunlight of the wasteland, many of them seeing it for the first time with their own unclouded eyes. As the last of the survivors exited and the dome finally collapsed in on itself, I turned to Rex. "Status report?" Rex's optical sensors surveyed the scene. "Mission successful. The cybernetic collective has been dismantled. Query: was this outcome worth the risk?" I watched as the freed individuals began to form small groups, already adapting to their new reality. "Absolutely! We didn't just destroy a twisted utopia, Rex. We gave these people back their humanity." Rex was silent for a moment, processing. Observation. The concept of humanity appears to be intrinsically linked to the capacity for individual choice and free will. As we began our trek across the salt flat once more, I reflected on our journey. We'd encountered so many warped visions of paradise, the hive mind of Swarm, the brutal materialism of the scrapyard king, the forced naturalism of the plant worshippers, and now this cybernetic perfection. Each time, the promise of utopia had come at the cost of what made us human. "Hey Rex," I said as we walked. "Yes, Rook? I'm starting to think maybe utopia isn't a place. Maybe it's just this. Making our own choices, helping where we can, being human even when parts of us aren't. An intriguing hypothesis. Perhaps our search for utopia is less about finding a perfect location and more about the journey of self-discovery and ethical decision-making." I nodded, a small smile forming despite the weight of our recent experience. "Yeah, something like that. Come on, partner. Let's see what other troubles we can get into out there." We set off into the wasteland once more. Utopia might be a myth, but out here, with Rex by my side, I'd found something just as valuable. A chance to define my own humanity in a world gone mad, and the opportunity to help others do the same.